Like to call the meeting of the city. I'd like to call the meeting of the Bloomington City Council to order. Please stand to say the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer and reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Walsh.
Here.
Councilmember Motney,
Here.
Councilmember Emig,
Present.
and Becker will get in a little bit. Councilmember Urban,
Here.
Councilmember Ward,
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler,
Here.
and Mayor Pro Tem Bolin.
Here.
Thank you.
I want to announce that Councilmember Becker is away for work purposes, and he is asked to attend remotely. Can I have a motion to approve that?
So
I'd be happy to make that motion.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Motney,
I'll second that.
second by Councilmember Urban.
All right, now do a roll call.
Okay.
Councilmember Walsh,
Yes.
Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Urban,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
So. Now is the public comment portion. Do we have any people to speak for public comment?
We do. We have 5 registered to speak in person. And just for the record, we did not receive any emailed public comment prior to the meeting. First up, we'll have Serena Fish, and then to follow Jennifer Weber.
Okay. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the city council. It's also an opportunity for the city council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility, focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time will cease. Madam Clerk, you want to call?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Serena Fish, and I'm speaking tonight on 8B, the DEP amnesty program. Part of the it's written is that this is something for a financially sound city service. No, because you're giving away money. It's not financially sound. Enforcing rules and regulations. No, you're forgiving debt that's way too old and you're never going to be able to collect it one way or the other. 90 days past due is $284,000. This is on parking tickets. 220,000 of that was 2020 or before that. Whoever's responsible for this in the city is either inadequate, untrained, and should be replaced, or the procedures reviewed for the future. if 220,000 were 2020 or before, it is very likely that due to Bloomington Normal being a transitory community, we have 2 large schools, people coming and going. We have a few large businesses, again, people coming and going, that at this point, if you have not collected a debt that's over 90 days or prior to 2020, I think it's time to turn it over to someone professionally who knows how to do it and come up with a new procedure, how we're going to handle this in the future. But as a citizen, I have been sitting in a few roundtable meetings, citizen groups, and the unanimous vote is no. We're tired of giving up our money. Thank you.
All right. Next up, we'll have Jennifer Weber, and then to follow Scott Steinling.
Evening. My name is Jennifer Weber. I'm a Ward 1 citizen of Bloomington. I'm here tonight to speak to consent item 7J on today's agenda regarding the recommended approval of the expansion of the liquor license for Cadillac Jacks. At both public hearings related to the recent license expansions, public comments have been submitted with concerns about noise from Cadillac Jacks and the impacts to nearby residents. The recommendation as written in today's agenda is to move forward, assuming the property owner ceases outdoor live music by 10 p.m. I agree this is a step in the right direction, but I feel like there's more that can be done. Saturday, July 9th is an example of a specific recent event since the 614 Liquor Commission, in which the noise levels were particularly disruptive. A benefit for St. Jude's was being held outdoors on the premises. Sound speakers began playing music at approximately 7:30 a.m. At 9:25, I contacted Mr. Bentley, asking for the volume to be turned down as I could hear the music speaker over and above other noises within my own home with my windows closed. It did quiet down for some time, but the music came back up to a similar level, so speaker noise really continued to be an issue throughout the day. Additionally, they had set up motorcycle burnout pits in the parking lot, which created excessive noise and tire smoke. As a property owner, I would have appreciated a direct request for permission or direct advance notice of this event and be advised of the potential disruption. This would have provided residents and property owners the ability to either make plans to leave for the day, but also avoid having events at their own residences that would have been completely overshadowed by the noise levels from Cadillac Jacks. Given that this is recent activity since the 614 Liquor Commission meeting, it leaves me concerned that the needs of the nearby residents are not being recognized. Let me be clear that I'm not here to shut down future benefits. I'm not here to disrupt a small business owner. I came instead to inform the council of the more recent concerns since the 614 Liquor Commission hearing and to propose some specific additional steps to mitigate property owners' concerns where we can maybe find the middle ground between all impacted parties. I would propose the following steps to Mr. Bentley. Number 1, include new security or expand security to the entire business property, including parking lots, to ensure the comfort, safety, and rights of nearby residents. Number 2, further lower the volume for routine outdoor events during the day in accordance with the city code noise regulations. 3, secure permission from property owners or give at least 60 days notice for scheduled festivals and special events that are expected to be disruptive. And number 4, proactively and frequently engage with residents for feedback moving forward. Per the 614 Liquor Commission meeting minutes, Mr. Bentley committed to continue to work with his neighbors. The above proposed steps would put those words into action and secure accountability. I ask that the City Council and Liquor Commission seriously consider the concerns brought forward today and vote no at this time and table the approval for the liquor license after discussion or agreement between the property owners and Mr. Bentley. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Scott Steinling, and then to follow Kathy Spawn.
Scott Steinman, Ward 5. I do have a concern regarding the fact that there is a speed hump down from the library. I saw an individual trip on it, bloody his nose, and he was face down. Fortunately, security came out and he was fine, that he didn't need to be transported. But I would think that something like this would really be of grave concern. I know it was there to slow the cars down, but by gum, it's a tripping hazard too. The other thing, these fireworks, I know it's fine to have the parades, in my opinion, but I wonder how Mr. Gleason would like a police officer discharging a firearm right next to his ear with no hearing protection. That's what a firecracker sounds like to a dog. I would, when I had a boarding kennel, that was the one holiday I dreaded more than any, not because of what happened on that day, but those lousy fireworks. Why can't we take that same money and put that into the roads that are crumbling under our eyes? Tonight in the 200 block of Fleetwood Drive, there are places that the grass is level with the curb. There is places on Washington Street. There's places all over the city. They say there are no potholes. Take their blinders off. I mean, there are potholes all over. I did over $800 worth of damage, not to this car, but another car, by hitting a pothole on a City of Bloomington street. The city said, there's insurance said, no, we won't cover it. My insurance covered right away, less a deductible. I wonder if they did that, if there'd been insurance fraud. That's basically everything I've got to say. The sidewalks are not ADA accessible. I saw a grandmother years ago hiking her junior high granddaughter in a wheelchair up over the curb. And I went down, I said, you are out of your mind. At that time, Jim Karsh was the public works director. And I told her, I said, I'd call Jim Karsh at City Hall. She must have done it because there was a truck out there the next morning at 8 o'clock to put that sidewalk in. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
Next up is Kathy Spawn, and then to follow Deborah Jackson.
Good evening. I live at 1612 South Center, right behind Cadillac Jack's. The noise is deafening. Sometimes it'll go on 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I call the police every weekend, because he violates the noise violation. You can't have your windows open on a nice summer evening. You can't have anybody over there. He disrespects everybody. And I don't know why this keeps continuing on and on and on. It has got to stop, and I hope that you don't renew his liquor license, because obviously he has not learned his lesson. That's really all I have to say. I'm just kind of tired of it. You can't sleep, can't do anything. I've had to move my bedroom to the front of the house with the windows closed and the TV up pretty loud. You can hear everything. I would invite each and every one of you, come to my house some evening on a Friday or Saturday night, unannounced, of course, and you can see what I mean. All the neighbors are complaining. We have elderly people, we have people that are sick, and we have small children. But a lot of them are afraid to say anything because of retaliation. So that's all I have to say. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up we have Deborah Johnson. I apologize for saying your name incorrectly. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Johnson. I live on South Linden Street in Bloomington. I have two items that I want to discuss tonight. My first item is the Linden Street traffic. I understand that that's a pretty busy street, Linden and Emerson. But being a resident of that neighborhood, I am very concerned about the speed. And I don't know what the protocol is to petition for maybe speed bumps or traffic bumps, but that area is a very high traffic area, and that's a very dangerous area. And I would like for to be considered, that action to be considered, because I would invite any police department to come into my driveway and just sit. And I'm sure their revenue would go up quite a bit because of the volume of traffic and the speed level that is on that, in that neighborhood. And my second agenda item of concern is the parking enforcement. I'm very concerned about Bloomington's method of satisfying parking tickets by giving away money or funds that these people owe. And I'm just concerned about that, because if you choose to forgive parking ticket, what's next? What else are we gonna forgive? And with taxpayers' money that is on the line, I think that money could be collected and better utilized for the city of Bloomington. We have streets that need to be repaired. We have facilities that are owned by the city that needs to be updated. So instead of forgiving the parking, collect all of that money and allocate that money for funds that can be utilized somewhere in the city of Bloomington where we can better utilize our city. And I am really concerned about the Market Street. Take that money and just take a walk down Market Street and see that we are, the west side of Bloomington is the gateway to off of 55 coming into the city of Bloomington. Just take a look at that area. The beautification committee or the beautifying that position, that place would be something that would be worthwhile to use that money for. Thank you very much.
And that's the end of public comment.
Thank you. Next up is recognition and appointments to boards and commissions. Okay, the first one is Barbara Singer to the Connect Transit Board. Would you like to stand if you're here? Ken Oda for the Sister Cities Committee, and Brandy Santamor for the Planning Commission. Is she here? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank all of those people for their continued service to the community. And the next item is the consent agenda. And I would like to remove 7G for further discussion after we vote on the rest of the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7G? What do you mean?
I need to pull 7J.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there anyone that needs to, wishes to pull another agenda item?
Thank you. I need to pull 7J, please.
I'd like to second that. To pull 7J.
Okay, we will have discussion once we make motion. So back to, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7G and 7J?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Crumpler and second by Councilmember Ward. Take the vote. There are no announces to, there are no nays to announce. Thank you. Wake up. Okay, we'll go on to item J, since Councilmember Urban pulled it. Let's start with you.
Sure, thank you. I'm actually pulling this in response to multiple emails that I've received in about this, as well as in response to the public comment that was made tonight. I'm pulling it because I think what I want to make a motion to send it back to the Liquor Commission. And I'm just encouraging everyone that sent me an email or spoke at public comment, it is imperative that when you get involved in your community, that you find these meetings and you attend those meetings and make your voices heard there. This is a last moment type scenario here once we get to the council meeting. And yes, we're going to rescue it this time, but it's just really important for everyone to be involved in your community, attend the Bloomington 101 classes, go to all the meetings that you can go to. Don't wait till the last minute when we're sitting here trying to figure out what we need to do in that final moment. So with that being said, I'd like to make a motion to return this to the Liquor Commission and have them review it, please.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I just want to
Well-
make a comment to clarify.
Sure.
My understanding is that Cadillac Jacks is asking for a redefinition of premises. In other words, it's not to vote on continuing a liquor license. It's to expand the outdoor seating area. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I support sending it back so that folks can have an opportunity to voice concerns. And I think that the problem of making that neighborhood, well, comfortable for everyone is a good goal. And we should keep trying to find other ways to do so.
I would like to make a comment. This won't be on, if it goes back to the Liquor Commission, it would not be on the agenda for tomorrow, but Liquor Commissions meet on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Is it the second Tuesday? It's the second Tuesday at 4 o'clock. So this agenda item may be placed next month, but I urge everyone to come and speak if you're able to, or send an email, and it will go into the public record. Thank you. Time to vote?
I actually, if you don't mind, Mayor Pro Tem, I just wanted to get, is there any additional clarification from Clerk's Office or Corporation Counsel? The clarification by Alderwoman Emig was something that I wanted as well, but is there anything else additional to say?
No, I was just going to
Mhm.
compliment Councilmember Emig in that that was exactly what needed to be said, unless Jeff has something else.
No, the only other thing I would say is I wouldn't Garrett, I'm not sure when this will be back in front of the Liquor Commission. They could also call a special meeting. I'm not sure what the timeliness of this is, so check our website and then they'll also give out the notices as well for it. So just that clarification.
Thank you, Jeff.
It definitely will not be on tomorrow's though, because it is not on the agenda.
So just a point of clarification, what we're about to vote on is not approval of 7J, but tabling of 7J and sending it back.
Remanding it back to the
Remanding it
Liquor Commission for further review and hearing.
So if I vote yes, that means it's going back.
Correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question? So when it goes back to the Liquor Commission, new evidence can be introduced to further enrich the conversation about the questions?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
And we're going to go ahead and put the vote up, but just so that you're aware, Nick, Councilmember Nick Becker has his hand raised, so he would like, and we were kind of forgetting him. So I
I'm s-
apologize to him for that too.
I'm sorry, Nick.
Uh,
I'd like to make some comments, please.
Molly asked my question. I just wanted to clarify exactly what she asked.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes, no nays to announce. The next item is consent agenda G that we're going to discuss. That item is consideration and action to approve a contract with Western Specialty Contractors in the amount of $223,687 for repairs of the Market Street parking garage. Mr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This is one that we had enough council outreach prior to the meeting that we pulled this in advance. Asked the facility director, Russ Waller, to come and speak to this first, and then open it up to any questions or comments from council prior to the item being called. Russ?
Thank you, City Manager Gleason, and good evening, council and Pro Temp. Going to give a quick description of kind of how we got to where we are tonight. I'll make it brief, so I'm probably going to skip some questions you have, so I'll by all means ask when I'm done. So back in 2019, we hired a structural engineer to do an evaluation of the garage. We actually did the arena garage at the same time, but that's outside the point of this discussion. So Market Garage, they came with their evaluation to the tune of almost $1.4 million worth of work that needed to be done. After discussions with the administration, we were asked to whittle that down, not necessarily to the bare minimum, but to just get some savings out of that and not do as much. So we put out to bid a project that we estimated would be in the $1 million range for the garage. So we bid that in 2019 or 2020, actually. And then the bids we got in, we did get multiple bids that ranged anywhere from just under $1 million clear up to almost $2.5 million for that work. We awarded that work, not the entire amount, but based on the bidding, based on some consequences of COVID and just some budgetary constraints, we were only allowed to go forward with $500,000 worth of work. So essentially the estimate of just under $1 million, we had to whittle down to $500,000. And that was true structural repairs that needed to be done to keep the garage open and operational. We did that work. That work did take a little longer than normal. We just completed it about a couple months ago. They finally finished up that work. The problem is that garage continues to deteriorate as time goes by. It's just such an old structure. It is very near the end of its useful life. So any repairs we do, unfortunately, a couple years later, we're back doing more repairs. So it's kind of a never-ending battle. But we are back tonight, basically asking for an additional almost $225,000 to kind of finish that major structural repair. So I don't know if anybody's been to the garage, but there's considerable shoring on the bottom level, primarily the bottom level, but throughout the garage. That is what we're asking to basically repair. That any members that are shored, essentially this work would repair those members, so we could remove that shoring, keep the garage safe and operational for a few more years until we work out what kind of replacement facility. There's several discussions in play. I think you're all aware of those with Connect Transit potentially taking that site. But we also, during this interim, we've also done a study on downtown parking, the needs, where we need, how much parking we need, and where a replacement facility, if one is necessary, where that would go. That report is almost done, not 100% done, but very close to being done. The Connect Transit issue made some delays in that, and they're basically modifying that to incorporate some of the changes associated with that. So essentially what we're asking tonight is what I call kind of an insurance policy. That work needs to be done to keep the garage safe. We've got a few more years guessing on how long it's going to take to get through the study to determine if Connect Transit's truly going to be there. Essentially, it's going to be a few more years, obviously, before that can actually take place. The 225,000, according to our structural engineer, should give us that 2 to 3 more years of life out of the garage. Alternatively, we were asked, well, what if we just don't spend the money? We just leave it the way it is, do maintenance, continue to inspect it. We can do that. That comes with some risk, which is what concerns me the most. What you're dealing with is a concrete structure that when it starts to deteriorate, it deteriorates kind of from the inside out. So water and salt moisture creeps into the fine cracks of the concrete structures, and it starts expanding that concrete. You don't see that right away. Unfortunately, when you see that deterioration, it's actually sometimes very severe, and you need to get shoring in there very, very quickly. And my concern is continuing with this ongoing observation and trying to do immediate repairs has some potential consequences that are worrisome. In order for us to get a contractor in place that quickly to get in there, provide shoring, it's difficult with our policies. Even if we did an emergency operation, contractors don't respond that quickly. You know, it might be emergency to us, but it's not an emergency to them. So we have a bid where we can get this work completed, kind of put the garage back on track for another 2 to 3 years of continued use and operation, make it safe. And then essentially by then, hopefully we have a better understanding of what's going to be the next steps. You know, what's going to happen to that garage? Do we turn it over connect, or do we basically replace it with the structure? So like I said, I look at it as an insurance policy to give us more time to finish out the studies, to finish what we're going to do. And then essentially the shoring that's there, any additional deterioration, which probably will occur between now and then, we have the shoring, we've purchased that shoring. We can get in there with our own staff if necessary to put shoring up into new places. Right now, we have no shoring left. If new deterioration would occur, we got to buy more shoring or hire a contractor to provide that. So it comes with the consequences of essentially what I just explained, with getting a contractor in there quickly will be a problem. So hopefully I addressed most of the questions that I saw earlier. Sure, I missed a few, but go ahead and open up the questions.
I'm going to start at the Councilmember Crumpler and then Ward.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Russ, thanks for coming this evening before council. Really appreciate, the updates. A couple of things I just wondered about. It sounds like that while you were finishing these last repairs, deterioration was continuing. Would that be fair to say?
Correct.
Okay.
Deterioration will always continue in a
Yeah.
structure like that. It's just, that one
And-
gets worse. as time goes
Right,
on.
right. And you talked about how old the structure is, and this, this 224, roughly $224,000 that we would approve this evening. Your estimation that will extend the life by maybe 2 or 3 years.
That's not my estimation. That's the structural engineer's
Okay.
estimation, which we have a pretty good relationship with. them, so I
Right.
trust that.
And I understand that, and I know the garage needs repairs fairly desperately, it looks like to me. But I'm wondering, at the end of those next 2 years down the road, or 3 years down the road, or whatever that time frame is, then what? Do we come back for more, another $225,000? Would it be reasonable to think about demolishing that garage and rebuilding something new? I know that, the Connect Transit discussions continue, but I'm just wondering, based on some of the things that you said tonight, you talked about safety, you talked about, just the life of the building itself. And I just wonder if that would be something you had thought about and would wonder about your opinion on that. Thanks.
Sure. So that actually plays right into probably a presentation we're going to provide later. I don't want to go too far into that tonight, but that evaluation we had of downtown parking that included what kind of replacement, what size type of replacement facility they recommend. And that evaluation, they do recommend not necessarily a structure. It could be a structure, but they basically gave us a number. And that number is about 350 spaces. So that can be accomplished in a couple of surface lots. It can also be accomplished in a deck. So that is part of that evaluation. And once that report is finalized, obviously we would share that with council and provide additional information.
Just real quickly, and I know this maybe would be a burden on the city. Have you thought about just closing the garage until it's safe again? Would that be a choice?
So that's definitely a choice, but I want to make it clear. The garage is not necessarily unsafe right now. It's still open, still operational. It's just the shoring that's there, the ongoing deterioration gives us concern. It's still safe, still park in there. I go down there basically weekly to do a walkthrough and inspect it. So there's no concern of that. And that's why we have the consultant come back regularly to do inspections. So obviously that would be a solution if the consultant came back and said, hey, you've got a serious problem here. This garage, you either need to get this repaired immediately or shut it down. That would be a solution that we go to the city, count the city administration with and basically say, we need to shut the garage down. And we could make that happen pretty quickly.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for the comments. Just a couple of clarifying questions. Can you tell us how many cars are currently parking there on a regular basis? I know that there are 350 spots, but how many cars are actually parking there?
So that's difficult to determine. Actually, it's a 550 space
Oh,
garage.
okay.
So the 350 is what they're saying we can live with in that
Mhm.
for a future based on projections and stuff. We don't do counts on it. Unfortunately, the way we operate that garage with the gates are currently open. We're not charging because of all the ongoing work and how that impacts the customers. So we can't count how many people are using it. We have some estimations, actually did some reporting, and then part of that analysis that was done is they estimated it. We're saying that COVID really took a knock on that garage. Some estimates that they provided were basically down to the 200, 250 space range. And some of their predictions, some of that report is that it's expected to return, just don't know how.
So not quite half capacity at this
About,
point.
yeah, maybe
Okay.
about half.
And so currently it's not providing any income to the city, right?
That is correct.
Okay. Um, what would the cost of demolition be
They've estimated that to be about $1 million.
to just level it to the ground and turn it into a parking lot?
We actually do more than that. So that 1 million is actually complete removal down, remove the foundations, everything. That way you basically can turn the site over to either a new garage or, for redevelopment of whatever chooses to go there or somebody chooses to put there.
So to,
So it's a little more in depth than just kind of taking it to ground level.
yeah, so to close it next week would cost us 250 parking spaces, but no money effectively.
Correct. There's some additional consequences, I think, of closing it. Probably not severe because we do have a tenant in one corner of the garage. That's the post office. So I think unless the structural engineer tells me otherwise, that's safe. We could close the actual parking area and keep the tenant where they are. It's just you lose that ability to have people park in the garage to go to the post office. So you're going to push a lot of people in addition to, people using the post office, other downtown business owners, you're pushing a lot of those people to somewhere else. And that somewhere else we really don't have. The nearest facility that would basically be able to handle that would be either the Lincoln garage or the BCPA lots, the former Frontier lots that we purchased.
Or the
several years ago.
Pepsi Ice Center, or the Ice Center garage, right?
The Ice Center garage is not that close. People would not be willing to walk that distance. In fact, the analysis that was done by the consultant says they would not even be willing to walk from the Lincoln garage down to the vicinity of the Market garage. That's too far. The closest one that some people, majority of people would be willing to walk to would be the BCPA lots.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. And Russ, I want to make sure I wasn't reading the information incorrectly. I thought the estimate was $2 million to demo. Did I read that wrong? Just to demo.
You might be right.
Okay.
I got a lot
Just
of
wanna
numbers in my
clarify.
head, so that's
Nope,
very
all good.
possible. We
Just
do
wanna
have an
clarify.
estimate from the consultant to demo it.
Councilmember Wallace.
Okay, well, thank you for being here this evening and explaining this and being prepared. And I just have some questions on the numbers you just ran through. So 2.5 years ago, you were looking at what you thought was about 1.4 million in repairs that needed done. You pared it down to about $1 million, got some bids, you did $500,000 worth of work. And now we're saying we only need another $225,000 to bring it up. So we're talking 750,000 out of $1 million that we were thinking 2 years ago we needed. Then, here we are 2 years later, and it seems to me that are our numbers low here from an estimate on this particular contract?
So a good clarification there. The 225,000 are the bare minimum, the structural, severe structural deterioration that's occurred. That is all that is going to repair. We're not touching the drainage. So if you've gone through the garage, you'll see all the drainage pipes hanging. None of those are working anymore. Basically, that original contract of $1.4 million was going to go through that garage and basically bring it up to very good usable condition. So it included drainage improvements, it included sealing the concrete, it included replacing all the joint sealants, basically everything you need to do to maintain a garage long-term. All of that was included in that $1.4 million. We whittled it down to the 500,000, which basically was structural, no drainage improvements, essentially the bare bones structural improvements that need to be done beyond, basically not including what the current remaining work, which is essentially T-beam work. Basically, the T-beams are the main structural components of that garage that support the cars. That is all this $225,000. It finishes out the structural repairs that are necessary to remove that shoring in place.
Okay.
We've estimated that to go back to include all those additional features that we pulled out of it originally, you're looking at an $800,000 project.
Okay.
And
With,
that is
with the
gonna
shoring
continue.
that's in there, I drove through there yesterday. It looked to me like there's well over 100 shoring jacks in there.
That's about right.
Okay.
Correct.
With this 225,000, how many of those shoring jacks would be left?
None.
Okay.
The goal is to remove all of those.
All right. And so this is all just structural. It doesn't do anything for the drainage issues within the parking garage. It doesn't do anything about sealing the concrete. And here we are with our lovely Midwest winter, spring, freeze and thaw, and we're going to keep putting water and ice in there on those little minuscule cracks that are just going to keep. So 2 to 3 years for this $225,000 probably isn't realistic.
I'll leave that to the structural engineer. That is a recommendation. He's providing that estimate, knowing that we're not going to do the ceiling. So the company that we use, Walker Consultants, are well-known in the parking industry. That's all they do. They don't do other structural work. Basically, they do parking garages. So I'm going to leave that to his determination and his recommendation that he's estimating that that's what it'll give us.
Okay, would you consider this throwing good, bad money after more bad money?
I consider it, like I said, an insurance policy. I look at it as you either spend this money or take some risk with leaving the garage open with additional inspection, ongoing inspection, with the potential that at a moment's notice, we need to shut the garage down.
Thank you.
Councilmember Urban.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for coming here and like addressing some of these issues with us. And I need to ask some tough questions, so feel free to have city manager jump in if you need him, please. If we decide as a council to not fund any more repairs for the garage, because our appetite is to tear that thing down and build up a green, viable, working space, whether that's on our own or with transit or whatever we decide that we want to do. What are my consequences or unintended consequences of saying, no, I'm not going to put any more money on Band-Aids on a failing structure?
Sure you don't want this one?
Well, I've answered quite a bit of that already, but I'll let the city manager say a few things.
No, and that is a good question. And I'm going to tie a response into some of the questions that have already been asked this evening. This is an interesting topic when we talk about the Market Street Garage, and I'm not necessarily saying that in a bad way, but it's one where, Russ is saying that for $200,000+, this is an insurance policy, and it is, but it's also buying us some time in terms of addressing the long-term solution for the downtown, because there are several conversations that are in play currently. We're going to blink and 2 or 3 years have gone by. The structural engineers have provided this quote for an amount of work to buy us that time and that insurance policy. If we were to shut this down immediately, We do have tenants, even though we have opened the gates and we're not charging. That's a decision that we've made, that we're not charging people. That is the highest used garage for our downtown local businesses. They would be up in arms. Even the conversation with Connect Transit as that location being a possible site. When that was prematurely released to the community, I immediately heard from some of the downtown users of the Market Street Garage, and I had to address that, saying that this is a premature conversation. Council has not decided this, and I guarantee that parking in the construction phase, whether we demo and rebuild in its entirety, entirely on our own, or whether we partner with the opportunity with the transfer station, we have got to figure out what the interim parking solution would be for this. So honestly, in my mind, this gives me 2 or 3 years to satisfy the additional time. It gives me 2 or 3 years to satisfy what am I doing as a long-term solution. So I would recommend that we do approve this. I do also appreciate all the questions that have been asked that are appropriate. This again has been an interesting topic, and we don't have the final solution yet.
Councilmember Motney?
I support spending this money for the repairs, and I'd like to share a little bit of the context as to why. We talk about the maintenance cost here in a term that demonstrates some degree of significance, at least anecdotally. However, the estimates that have been shared in terms of the cost to demolish and rebuild the structure would allow us to spend $250,000 a year in maintenance for 50+ years, and we still would not be at that point in terms of the cost that we're talking about. So I just wanted to share that. It sounds to me like, Russ, as you were talking earlier, the amount of money that you had asked for previously would have provided beyond structural integrity, but have addressed some of these other things that my colleagues have mentioned. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Which begs to question, at some point, should we be talking about that, at least having it in the options that we consider from a cost benefit perspective relative to this garage. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Becker?
I'm in agreement with Councilmember Motney on the maintenance costs. I think we have no choice but to do this right now, based on what she has said and also what Tim said. I think we have to buy ourselves a little time, and there's no the risk that Russ stated for us very well. Thank you very much for your information. I think would be too great to existing businesses and to safety if we didn't do the work.
Thank you, Nick. I would like to make a comment. I have heard for the past 8 years, and I'm sure you're aware, we're going to fix it a little because we don't know what we're going to do with it. And I also remember Councilmember Matthey and I both 3 years ago said, we really need to bite the bullet. The thing is nearly 50 years old. It's way beyond the life of a garage. I understand that you need to do this Band-Aid now, but I do think maybe at the visioning retreat, we need to bite the bullet or at least address that issue so that you can begin to move forward with the actual big fix. Okay, thank you. Yes.
Thank you. So I just want to make, am I on? Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make one comment, and I appreciate your presentation. City Manager, I appreciate your input. My issue in my heart and my gut is this is a can that has been kicked down the road over and over and over again. I am not kicking this can. So I'm not going to support this. I'm going to say no. And I'm saying no, not because I don't want the safety of the garage, not because, none of those reasons. I'm saying no because the can's stopping here with me. I will not kick this can any further. If I had my way, I would say, get a new place there. So I just wanted to make that clear, that it's time for us as a council, it's time for me. I'm not kicking cans anymore. We needed to fix this a long time ago, and we've been kicking this can for a long time, and I want to stop. So I won't be saying yes. I apologize for that, but that's what I've got to do.
Thank you. Oh, Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to make a motion to approve this item as stated.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Crumpler, second by Councilmember Emig. Can you vote? Come on. 1, 2, 3, 4. The agenda item passes. Can you announce the nays, please?
Yes, Councilmember Urban, Councilmember Walsh, and Councilmember Ward.
Okay, thank you. The next agenda item is the regular agenda. And I need to pull it up on my computer. Okay, 8A has consideration and action on a resolution clarifying the fees for the agreements with the PFM Asset Management and Bussey Wealth Management for investment advisory systems. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and the council. Finance Director Scott Rathman is going to walk us through a brief presentation before the item's called.
Thank you, City Manager. This is a somewhat of a simple agenda item, but we thought we'd take the opportunity to provide just an update on our investment advisor relationships. This is not meant to be a deep dive. We will be inviting those investment advisors in on separate occasions to do presentations to council and really kind of review the investments, the strategy, et cetera. But last fall, we determined that, we have about a $27 million to $30 million reserve target across all funds. The interest rate environment was very difficult back then. Being good stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, we thought it wise to engage financial advisors at that time to assist us in eking every ounce of return we can get out of those cash reserves that we're holding. The council memo at that time had a cap, a dollar amount cap. We were going to invest $50 million. The fee structure was about 0.125% of assets under management. So that was going to be about $62,500 per year. So we had a cap on the memo of $70,000. And the agenda item tonight is really just to remove that dollar cap and just reference the agreement, the rates within the agreements with the advisors, so that we don't have to liquidate the portfolio once it starts producing better returns and we exceed, $60, $70 million, and the fee's going to go up substantially because of that. Maybe not substantial, but because of that. And then one additional item that I want to mention is that we have closed on the library/pool bond. So we have pool bond cash in the bank account right now. Of course, that's going to get spent over the next year, but we also have ARPA funds. So we've realized all of our American Rescue Plan Act dollars. Council is reviewing how we want to deploy those. But in the meantime, we have excess cash. So we want to look at whether or not we want to utilize the advisors for that as well. So that's another reason to remove this cap on that fee structure. So this slide is a recap of some of the items I just mentioned. September 21, council approved $25 million engagements with PFM Asset Management and Busey Wealth Management. At that time, the Illinois funds, that's a local government investment pool. Those are investment funds that are managed by state treasurers. We use that kind of as a benchmark for our cash holdings at banks for our sweep accounts, et cetera. It was paying less than 0.5%. So that's what really prompted that review at that time. And the initial goal of the engagement was to realize an extra 1% return via these professionally managed portfolios, having eyes on, expertise, constantly looking, freeing us up in finance to do other operations of the city. So an extra 1% would realize an extra $500,000, even netting out the fees, would be $400,000 better off. Next slide, please. So how are we doing? Just from a very high level, I was going to utilize Busey Wealth Management to kind of highlight some of the returns we're seeing so far. The portfolios, they didn't get fully deployed. The cash didn't get fully deployed until through in a year. Rates started kind of going crazy. So the investment advisors, they were taking their time, putting some the cash in short-term instruments because they started those rates going up. So each month we kind of have a snapshot of what our average yield to maturity. So we're not looking at our market value of our portfolio because our market value is actually taking a hit because rates are going up. And if you hold fixed instruments, which these are all fixed instruments, and they're at a certain rate and rates start going up, the market value of those instruments is going to go down. We're going to hold these instruments until maturity. So we're looking at yield to maturity and comparing that to what we would have realized if we would have just kept our cash in Illinois funds, which is basically a money market short-term investment fund. So highlighting what Busey pulled together for us here. In April, you can see that the average yield to maturity was 2.4%. Illinois funds was paying less than 0.5% of interest. As of May, 2.6%. So we had some roll-offs of maturities. They reinvested at higher rates versus 0.795 for Illinois funds. And then as of June, 3.5% versus 1.1. So you can see even Illinois funds is going up very significantly month over month as the Fed funds rate changes and the federal government starts implementing those changes to try to slow down inflation. So we are experiencing a significant spread between what we would have been in the cash. So from a summary, from a high level, the advisors are performing as desired. We have expertise watching our cash for us, frees up finance staff, as I mentioned, to focus on operations of the city, and we're realizing better returns to boot. So next slide, please. So just, real high level, just safety is number one in our investment policy, right? And that is written into the state statute as well, basically dictates what municipalities can invest in. So this just kind of gives a very high level view of where our cash is. As I said, we'll have the advisors in to go through the details on this, but you can see U.S. Treasuries for Busey, 53% of the portfolio. I won't read all these. Off to the right, you can see that most of the portfolio is in AA plus S&P 500 S&P rated companies or agencies. And then I put a snippet in here too to show the strategy within the portfolio. 42% of the portfolio maturing just in the next 2 years. So they're watching the yield curves. They understand the Fed can manipulate or control things in a way, and they're trying to execute and acknowledge that activity. Next slide, please. So this is PFM Asset Management. You can see that they're a little bit more conservative. They have 71% of the funds in treasuries versus 53% for Busey. I won't go through the performance. They did not provide the same kind of slide that Busey did, and we'll highlight PFM with the next review. Pretty similar distribution of assets and pretty similar credit quality related to the S&P. Here we have 78% in that AA plus category. Next slide, please. So, just to summarize, as I opened, our advisors are providing expertise in diversification, rate monitoring as we desired. That was the intent of the engagements. We had very competitive fee structure, I believe. PFM Asset Management, you can see 0 to 25 million is at 0.1%. Busey 0 to 50 million, 0.15%. PFM Asset Management from 25 to 50. I wanted to show the, 0 to 50 range is at 0.08. So they have a tier structure. So their costs are a little lower than Busey, but we wanted to go with a local presence. That was discussed, at the time we brought forward the recommendation for these advisors. So my recommendation is to, approve the resolution so that we don't have that dollar cap limit on these relationships. We can let the portfolios grow. We can put in some short-term cash if it looks like we have an opportunity to gain more interest, because the Illinois funds and the sweep accounts at our banks, those always lag significantly on some of the rates that we can get in the market, even with short-term treasuries, T-bills, et cetera. As long as we have, the focus on and watching the dollars that we can get from our investment advisors. So by adopting this resolution, we can put additional dollars in if we deem that a wise move, in the short term, as we have these funds just sitting in our bank account. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll pause for questions or comments.
Councilmember Crumpler?
I'm sorry, I have nothing.
So you don't have a question or comment?
No, I do not.
Okay. Councilmember Enoch?
Fake out. Thanks for the report. I just have a question about why initially, and this is for my edification and perhaps others who were wondering, did we limit the annual fees to 70,000? Like, why was that a good idea to do so back then?
To be honest, I'm not really sure. When we were doing the memo, it was 62.5 was the blended rate. And it seemed like, since it was kind of a large step for the community and for council, engaging investment advisors at the, tune of $50 million, that to put a fee cap, a numeric fee cap on there, seemed like a conservative approach. But in retrospect, it actually is limiting, on the positive performance of the portfolios.
Mhm. So we kind of learned how to do better as we go.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'd like to make a comment. I'm very happy with this. And those advisors are forward-looking, which is they are really on top of the market movement. And they can't predict the future, but with their expertise and the forward-looking, it's really beneficial for the community. So thank you for moving this forward.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Motney and second by Councilmember Crumpler. So we can vote. Oh, I forgot to ask. There are no names to announce. The motion passes. Okay, the next item is item B, consideration and action on an ordinance approving a temporary parking debt amnesty program. So I'll turn it over to City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This agenda item, actually rolling into tonight's meeting, thought we were going to be taking a victory lap, and I think we're going to be talking a little bit more about this agenda item. The original thought was, and again, this is something that's evolved over the last couple of years as we have, as a city, have gotten more aggressive regarding some of our back fees, unpaid fees, by entering into the state's iDrop program. This window that we're proposing, I had prep council realize that we have received, since the agenda was posted, that council members have heard from some constituents. And if tonight we halt and staff are asked to go a different direction, that's completely fine. We can be a little bit more aggressive than what was initially being proposed. But before I turn the floor over to Scott Rathbun to walk us through what this proposal is, this was a small window, a 30-day window to provide parking amnesty, take half of the proceeds that were collected for those that are behind in paying these fees, and partnering with a program to provide backpacks and such to District 87 and Unit 5 schools for the back to school program. Guarantee that if we take, if this is approved tonight and we take that more aggressive approach, you know, a boot on some of the vehicles, step this up a notch, we're still going to have plenty of those boots to deploy, because we're not going to have everyone take advantage of this 30-day amnesty program. But we look to council for direction after Scott Rathbun's brief presentation on the item. Scott?
Thank you, City Manager. I admit after hearing some comments, I made a few extra notes just to kind of open this up. One of the complexities, the issues with parking debt is it's basically a high volume, low ticket situation. So there's almost 10,000 citations that have balances due. Last full report I looked at, it's been a challenge through the years for parking enforcement that's been handled by facilities and police going through the years. To collect these debts, we engaged the collections side of the software provider vendor that we use, T2 CCS, for a collections contract in 2017. My understanding is, you know, looking at booting, towing, all these had complexities related to safety of staff, notification to the residents ahead of time, and then cars can be moved. So iDrop was, I think, originated a few years ago. I began hearing, you know, it was either Champaign or Urbana had utilized it very successfully. So we started looking at it for this kind of debt. So, you know, it's kind of one of those where you can roll all the debt into the state's program via just an upload. So, you know, high volume, and you can still produce results, hopefully, without having to touch each item. So like the collections firm, they don't contractually are not contractually obligated to execute a lot of activity, because, you know, you could have a ticket in their firm or in their system for $38. I mean, that's what a ticket escalates to by the time it goes to collections. So there's, you know, not filing of credit activity and that kind of thing, you know, direct calls to a lot of individuals. So iDrop was considered to be, you know, a good solution. A lot of municipalities utilizing it successfully. So I think the idea was, you know, an opportunity before we launched that program to address, you know, potentially maybe some residents that it had gotten away from them, or, you know, what we thought might be a benefit to the community from a charitable standpoint. So just the facts going forward now. Next slide, please. So approximately $284,000 in citation debt over 90 days past due. I want to emphasize that a significant amount of that is related to the collections fee and late fees. So the $10 citation escalates to $38 by the time it goes to collection. So that means that 74% of that balance is really related to late fees and the collections fee. The city is set to utilize the state's local debt recovery program, also known as iDrop, to augment collection efforts on this debt. This will be, I think, a very significant tool in addressing this high volume, low value debt activity. We're proposing an amnesty program, 50% off the debt, with some dollars going to the Back to School Alliance, looking at that as a win for the resident debtor, the city, and the community. Next slide, please. The current proposal for the amnesty program would be a 50% reduction only in debt for debt that's in the collections system, so 90 days past due. a narrow window, as the city manager mentioned, July 15th through August 15th. We'd be looking to process the remaining debt through the iDrop program. Payments must be paid. So if approved, payments must be paid by calling or visiting the city customer service hub. We need to process payment activity through the collections vendor. And then just, a little rundown, adjusting for the collection agency fees, the city will retain approximately $4 of the original $10 citation amount. So if you look at this from just the original citation, the city will retain about 40% of that original citation amount after donating $2 to the Back to School Alliance. So that's on a per citation basis. And again, you can see here, if just for the collections component, I mentioned there's almost 10,000 citations that are due, but those aren't all in collections. That at the time of this presentation was put together, 7,000 citations are 90 days past due. Next slide, please. So this is just some information on the Back to School Alliance. The goals, in the bottom right corner, helping kids get off to a good start when school begins, putting most basic tools in hands to help them achieve a success in their education, creating a positive experience as they start the school year. So again, high volume, low dollar debt, need to find a kind of a bulk way of processing it. The iDrop program, I think, will be a very successful approach to that, whether this program is approved or not. Questions or comments?
I'm going to go to Nick first because I forgot to reach out to him last night. Councilmember Becker, would you like to make a comment?
Yeah, if you look at the little, I'm raising my hand when I need to say something in the Zoom. So if you can see that, that would.
I cannot, no.
Okay.
So
Anyway, the only question I have for Scott is, with my collections experience in the past, in a different scenario, I find often the cost of collections and that this seems like a good financial deal to me. So I just want to ask you the one question, which is, if we go through collections, what percentage do you think we'll end up getting out of that $10? Will we get more than the 40% or less? My experience would be less, so we wouldn't really be giving away money, as some of the concerned citizens are stating. We'd actually be gaining money. That's what my guess is, and my guess is that you're thinking similar to that and getting the benefit of helping out some kids. That's why I think you're presenting it as a win. Can you?
Great question. I don't have statistics as far as an expectation for iDrop. I know it's been successful. I also am concerned, though, that I know a lot of individuals manage their tax returns, their tax fines, et cetera, so that they don't get refunds. And so the iDrop program is based on dollars being held back by the state from tax refunds and redirected to local governments for this program. So there's, to your point, I believe, there's a risk that we could submit a lot of this debt, and individuals will strategically manage their financials so that they aren't exposed to the program.
Well, no, that really, that helps. But my question is, if you just forget this program altogether,
Okay.
if you just send these all out to collections of the original, $10 or whatever, are you expecting to get 4 back? Or are you expecting to get in the net, not just, what's the net that we expect we'll get back? Is it going to be less than 4?
Yes, I mean, we are utilizing the collections firm already, and my calculations that I did prior to the meeting is that we're collecting about 25% of the dollars that get submitted.
So and this is a comment now. Thank you, Scott. Good job as always. This is a comment to those that are concerned, and I'm number 1 on the list of hold people accountable. People should pay their debt. I get that. But if this gets us 40% of the money versus 25%, the city is gaining 15%. We're not giving away or losing money. We're benefiting some children that could use the help. It feels like it could be a good plan, other than the fact that we don't get to hold the people accountable quite as firmly as some of us that grew up in the very strict accountability phase. But it seems okay to me.
I'm sorry. Councilmember Ward, Emick, Montney, and Walsh.
Thanks for the presentation. Just one question. Do you have any data on income levels roughly of people who have outstanding tickets and citations and debts?
No, I don't have any, we don't have any data at all related to that.
Councilmember Emick.
Thank you. I need to do more research, but I think there is some data where we see that parking tickets affects a certain demographic more than others. And in that way, it's considered regressive. And people should be accountable, but perhaps this provides a rescue, a way to pay something while also not recouping some of the costs that we haven't been able to recoup. So I'm in favor of this. I think that it's limited. I think that it addresses an opportunity for people to pay some of their debt off. The fees can grow exponentially, and that can be a burden for some to pay. I really like that we're donating some funds to the Back to School Alliance, and I think it would be really interesting to do a cost analysis after 1 month to see what we have recouped. And then I think it's the Illinois Debt Recovery Offset Portal. Is that IDROP? There are lots of IDROP acronyms out there, and that's the one that you're referring to. And that's where we go into more aggressive tactics to recoup dollars. Is that right? And so that can still happen, but let's give folks an opportunity to pay the amount of the initial fee at least. And it won't be reduced less than 50% as I read it correctly. So I am in favor of this. Thank you.
Councilmember Montney.
Just first of all, checking this backdrop, the statistic that was sent to me earlier, about 60% of this debt is about 50 individuals. Is that correct? 53 people owing $180,000?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so within that, I mean, that's a small enough population where we should be able to actually develop a point of view about the actual demographics and income level of these folks. I think, if we're working at a perception level, I mean, we might believe that, this is about a regressive situation, but it may not be that way. And I think we should understand what those facts are. I'm interested in what the delinquency rate is and how that has trended over time.
I don't have those statistics in front of me right now.
And so whatever that number is, I'm just going to say, let's assume just for the point of conversation that it's 10%. That means that 90% of the people are actually actively paying their tickets. And in this situation, we would be removing half the debt of 53 people potentially if they pay. I'm just putting that out there in terms of just a point of clarification as we think about that. I mean, that's like $3,400 a person for 53 people. I'd like to know who they are. Perhaps these are people who have the opportunity to pay that debt, while others have been paying that debt. I think the delinquency rate is a metric that we should probably track to help, have an understanding of what this collections really is over time. It seems like I recall in a prior meeting, there was one particular example of an individual that was particularly egregious with accumulation of parking tickets. So within that population of 53, there's probably a range, I'm assuming. And again, just kind of having an understanding of what that range is, even within that population of 53.
Councilmember Walsh.
Thank you. Going to this number of 53 individuals with that great amount there. Do we know how, of these 53 individuals, how many of them have multiple citations?
They would all have multiple citations.
Okay, so these are people who just constantly don't care that we have parking rules and regulations that they have to follow and that they should be following. And that here we are, we're gonna turn around and we're talking about giving them a nice little reward for continuing to do the same thing over and over again. With this amnesty program, how would it be advertised? You know, you have 30 days to get this done. How's the city gonna advertise this?
We're going to utilize our, what's Catherine's title? Communications and External Affairs Manager. So we would utilize all social media, website, et cetera. And this meeting was meant to be as also kind of a launching point or a way of pushing out the information on it.
Would there be any costs to the city in advertising this program?
Staff time, I would assume, but otherwise no direct costs.
Okay. And then something that Councilmember Becker was touching on, where he said he was talking about the 40% versus the 20%. When we talk about submitting the dollars for collection, we're not just submitting $10 for each individual. We're talking about submitting $10 plus any additional fees, any additional fines on top of that for the collections. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The escalation is a $10 original citation, then there's a $5 late fee. I don't remember, after so much time, then a $10 late fee. So it escalates to $25. And then when it goes to collection, a $13 collection fee is added on top.
Okay, so there we're up to about $38. So we'd be submitting $38 and you talk about a 25% return on that. That's a little bit more than $2 or $4 there for us. So, all right, thank you.
Are we over time? Do I need to ask for an extension?
We are. If it was going to wrap up kind of quick, I guess you'd be okay, but that's your decision.
I just have one additional question.
Okay.
I just have a couple.
Can I have a motion to extend?
I'll make a motion to extend the discussion for 10 minutes.
I'll second that. Okay, moved by Councilmember Emig, second by Councilmember Urban.
All right, Councilmember Walsh,
Aye.
Councilmember Motney,
Yes.
Councilmember Emig,
Yes.
Councilmember Becker,
Yes.
Councilmember Urban,
Yes.
Councilmember Ward,
Aye.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes.
Nothing.
Okay. So in light of this 53 that are chronic, and it's my understanding that these are long-term chronic issues, is there ability here for us to not make this an all or nothing, but really look for an opportunity to honor the spirit of what the staff's recommendation is, but perhaps carve out these 53 individuals who have amassed chronic long-term debt through repeated parking violations?
Well, I'd let Jeff respond to that, but I would imagine we could amend it to restrict the eligibility to individuals that owe less than $1,000 or something like that, just to use a hypothetical situation.
I'd be interested to know my colleagues' thought about a compromise in that type of lane. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thanks, Scott, for your insights as always. I wonder, do you see this as a one-time program or is this something we're considering doing annually?
Personally, I saw it as a one-time program before we launched the iDrop program, which we would continually to roll debt through that program. We were talking about doing it once a year,
Okay.
but that would be the go-to program going forward.
Okay, thanks. And my second question, you talked about $4 of that original $10 citation the city would recover. Will that offset the program costs of the administering the amnesty program? Do you know what I mean?
Well, I guess it depends on how many $4 come in, but administering the amnesty program, we really shouldn't have additional direct expenses related to that. I mean, the activity will be handled by our hub staff. I don't foresee this driving overtime. They should be able to accommodate the payments and the write-offs, et cetera, and working with the collections firm.
Okay. And then finally, I've heard from a number of constituents who view this as, again, not holding people accountable. Do you think this action sends any message like that from the city, that we're really letting people off the hook?
That's a tough question. Personally, I think since we have a plan on the other side of this, that is meant and driven to hold people accountable and to process that debt with the options that we have available to us readily, like the iDrop program, the state program. I think as long as, we have a set plan in place, that message isn't that severe.
Thank you. Also, in responding to Councilmember Motney, I would be interested in other people's thoughts about amending this so that that 53, I hate to use that number, but I'm concerned, I guess, that individuals who have the ability to pay and just choose not to, that seems to me to be a different demographic than those perhaps who don't have the means to pay those tickets and may need assistance. So in response to your question, yes, I would be interested in thinking about that.
I have just one question. What is the success rate from Decatur on this amnesty? Like how many people took advantage of it?
I don't recall the number. We shared internally some of the news articles and the memos that they were disappointed in their amnesty program. They did not get the results that they were expecting. I recall that they had $20,000, something like that, come in, but I think they were anticipating it to be a much larger amount.
Can I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a
Councilmember
procedural
Motney.
question. What is the reason, I mean, given again, this example of this long-term chronic amassing of disregard to the city's ordinances, why is it that we don't use this? I think it's called the boot. Is there a point of view as to why we don't take more firm measures in order to have compliance with the city ordinances for parking?
I'm gonna need somebody to, there we go. Russ, I don't know if you have an opinion. I'll bring you up to the podium if you want to share your thoughts. And while he's coming up to the podium, one thing that I would share, I think it was Councilman Alderman Crumpler's question, of Scott. This is not a perfect item where we have this overwhelming belief that this is the best thing that we should do. And we do think it sends a message potentially, if this was approved as council presented it, it probably does send a bad message, in this one specific instance. But we thought that there might be enough upside with what was being presented that this is something that council as a one-time could approve. So it's definitely not perfect to some of the comments that have been made during this discussion, public comments, but thought that it was something to at least explore. So appreciate the conversation. Russ?
So I don't remember the exact date or the year that I was inherited the parking enforcement. But since then, I've spent a lot of time looking at the data, getting the citation collection services implemented. I noticed this backlog and started working on it as soon as I took over that program. And I don't have any demographics. It's really tough to track any of that stuff. We are very limited on the data we can get. So we use a program that based on the license plate. We send that out to a service that goes to all the DMVs nationwide. Some DMVs do not cooperate with that, but basically then they come back with the owner and current address based on the registration of that vehicle. That is all the information we get. And a lot of the times it's incorrect. So a big majority of that debt is either one, not associated with the customer. We have no idea who that person is because we never get anything back from the DMV. And then another portion of that debt is also, we, in addition to this original citation, we're sending out notices. So we send out multiple notices and to the address at the registration. A lot of those come back because those people move. So we have a very, very hard time of actually placing that debt with the rightful owner. And that's probably the biggest part of the struggle is that. So if you take it beyond that, as far as once it's turned over collections, then they take over that initiation and research, trying to get a valid address or trying to link that customer, that car to the owner. Then you have the ones that are constantly getting citations that don't pay. And those, the challenge we have there is they, in addition to the issue with address changes and stuff like that, I do believe you've got a lot that basically are just skirting the law. They basically says, I'm not going to pay this. I haven't paid it for years and nothing's ever happened to me. There is a big substantial, and I believe that's the 53 you're probably talking about. There are multiple citations. They've never paid a one. That is where some sort of a program, which modifying our tow program would be a good start, or booting. I'm not really a fan of booting. You are putting some of our staff in danger because obviously if you're at the amount of time it takes to put on a boot could conceivably have that customer come out and do bodily harm to the person putting on a boot, because obviously that would be, very detrimental to them continuing with driving and not getting away with not paying the citation. So I would be reluctant to that. I think if we were going to pursue that, we would have to look at, who performs that service. Do we hire it out? Do we turn that to a different agency? Or, is that training or additional, whatever to basically do that? So I'm not a big fan of the boot. I would be a fan of changing the tow process. So, and Jeff can jump in here because I know the tow process based on what I've been told, but I've actually looked at the legal code, but my understanding is it's very difficult to implement the tow process based on all the notifications that have to be done. And you're not allowed to essentially go tow that vehicle unless you find it on the public right of way. There's so many steps involved with that the time management, the amount of time it takes to do that is extremely cumbersome. And Jeff can jump in and either add or correct me if I did say something wrong with that part of it.
No, I think you're correct, Russ. And I was going to say, we can certainly look at other options in terms of enforcement. I look at this as, I think as Russ was alluding to, there were no enforcement actions going on related to this for some period of time. So we've got to start. And this is the start of it. We're starting with the iDrop. This was kind of another program easing into that, so to speak. But this is, essentially putting the community on notice. We are going to start enforcing this. You're not just going to be able to throw these tickets away. And you've got to start somewhere. And this is essentially where we're starting. So, but we can certainly look at other enforcement mechanisms and can bring recommendations for those back to the council as well.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve? No. Okay, I guess it dies. Can I have a motion to?
You don't necessarily need a motion to deny. You could get a motion to table if you wanted or to approve, but if there's no motion, then it just dies for lack of a motion.
So basically it dies and it's back in staff's hands? Or do I need a motion to actually send it back to staff?
No, I think staff could bring it back at some point, but.
Oh,
Well, I was, well. So suggested amendment is along the lines of what Alderwoman Montney was suggesting, that we limit the debt forgiveness to those who owe less than 1,000. Is that right?
Well, if I'm allowed to respond, I mean, in hearing the additional discussion, I don't know that that would be appropriate for our community. You know, when we have people who have paid tickets all along, and it seems that there are a lot of unanswered questions here with regard to the prior lack of enforcement. So, you know, of course, if that motion is made and seconded by someone else, then we'll all be voting on it, but it's not a motion that I would want to bring forward hearing the balance of the discussion.
Considering how much time we've spent on this particular agenda item, I would rather just have it go back to staff than to try to amend it on the floor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Consideration and action to approve the local 362 inspectors labor contract. Turn over to City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Next two items, we are going to take victory laps on these. These are collective bargaining agreements with the Laborers International, two separate collective bargaining agreements. And what's before council on letter C is the inspector collective bargaining agreement before council. 3% increases effective May 1st of 2022, 3% increase in May 1st, 23, and a 3% increase May 1st of 24. Just like with the telecommunicators a couple of weeks ago when we approved that collective bargaining agreement, the approach has been to add additional steps early on in a career in an attempt to raise the newer employees up to a higher level. We're seeing that trend in the market. We have extremely valuable employees throughout the entire organization, but the inspection group is one that we're very dependent on in this community with growth. It's a conversation that has been had many times about doing more, increasing our efforts, and then also the capacity out in the community has driven this as well. So this is a group that came to the table. Negotiations went extremely well. This is Economic Community Director Melissa Hahn's team. Negotiations were led by Angie Brown, the Assistant Human Resources Director. And, you know, you always work towards a win-win. And this is exactly what is before council for approval tonight. The Laborers International representative, Ronnie Paul, is not able to be here tonight. I believe he's traveling work related, but we do have city staff that's set on the negotiations team. And for the inspectors, it's Tony Brown, Joe Fowler, Gail Price, Carl Fever. And for you that I've called off, please stand just to be recognized by everybody. And do appreciate your efforts. Mayor Pro Tem, that's all I've got at this point. Thank you.
Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move that.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Ward, second by Councilmember Emig. Any discussion? I have a question. Could you address sick leave buyback?
Sick leave buyback in all of the contracts have been addressed.
Okay, thank you.
And prior to this, I mean, in the past, they've been addressed.
Okay, thank you. Take a vote.
My vote still shows for 8B.
If you refresh, it should.
Thank you.
There are no nays to announce. And the next item is 8D, consideration and action to approve the local 362 support staff contract. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Very similar comments. Laborers International represents the support staff that are through different departments in the organization. Very similar contract proposal before council tonight, where we've added additional longevity steps. Again, trying to follow that trend to preserve the workforce. Also 3% raises, increases each of the 3 years of the contract. Collective bargaining agreement expired April 30th of this year. So the new one went into effect with back pay, would be eligible for that May 1st of 22. Then we have a May 1st, 23 and a May 1st, 24 increase. This staff, and we have some here that are a part of the negotiating team, support staff in the individual departments really are that backbone that make a lot of things happen in the individual departments. And oftentimes they don't get the recognition that they deserve. So I'm going to do that publicly tonight, given this opportunity with the collective bargaining agreement. Some of the team that we have here tonight is Anastasia Shawback. Go ahead and stand up. She's a new union steward. She replaced Francis Watts that recently retired from the city. We also have Kim Givens and Doug Lancaster. You guys stand up, and just thank you for your approach at the table. Appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem.
Excuse me. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Moved by Alderman Ward, second by Alderman Montney. We're gonna vote. And there are no nays to announce. And the next item is 8E, presentation of the redistricting map options proposed by staff and a resident. City Manager Gleason.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. I'm going to turn this one over to the Deputy City Manager and the City Clerk. We've got a presentation.
Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council. The city of Bloomington, as you know, was one of the communities that actually saw an increase during the last census count, which was a great thing. One of the things that we've also seen is that census count showed that there was a shifting of population, leaving 2 wards, that being Ward 7 and 8, which were out of line with statutory requirements related to a number of different things, but mostly population. The goal is to have each ward have roughly 8,700 residents. That number is actually 8,742 residents. Ward 7 had, as a result of that count, showed 7,711 residents, and Ward 8 had 10,973 residents. Which is led to a need for us to draw new maps for your consideration. Those new boundaries, in addition to population, also have to meet legal requirements for compaction, which is what it sounds like, but also contiguity, meaning the borders are contiguous and things like that. So the city staff has drawn a series of 4 maps that we presented to you, and tonight we're actually presenting to the public in this meeting. In addition to that, we had 1 resident as part of that process to submit a map as well. So there are 5 maps for your consideration. The goal for tonight is really just to introduce the maps. We have had them on the city's website so that people could take a look. And we've also had the data to be considered as part of the website, so the public again could draw maps if they so desire. And again, we had 1 person to submit a map. Again, the goal tonight is just to introduce the maps openly as part of a meeting. We would having more in-depth description and discussion at next week's committee of the whole meeting with a hopeful vote here in the near future. With that, really, the team that has worked on this has been obviously Jeff Jurgens, but also Leslie Yoakum, our city clerk, and Troy Olson, who is a part of our engineering team, and they've done a lot of work. Couldn't have imagined there was that much work that had to go into doing this, but there was. So with that, we're really going to have Leslie sort of talk through the reasons we came up with the 4 maps that we did and really let you know what they represent. And with that, I'll turn over to Leslie.
Great, thank you, Billy. And really, he should be bragging more on Troy Olson with all of his GIS knowledge, because he's really amazing in that sense. If we can go to the next slide, please. So as Billy mentioned, staff put together 4 different maps that we've got here. And if you're having a difficult time seeing them, they are available on the city's website. And there's a banner right when you go to the website to be able to look at them closer, along with the data and additional information about the requirements of the statute. So this first map is what we call our minimal moves map. So it's Plan 1. And truly what we did is work to make sure, first of all, that they satisfy all of the required tests, which they do, and all of the maps that are presented do a very great job of meeting those qualifications. And I'll point out that none of them have more than a 4% population deviation. And by statute, it's required to not be more than 10%. So they're pretty impressive on that side. The minimal moves that we have in front of us right now, out of the 4 presented by staff, this one actually came in 4th place, and that's for compaction and population deviation. But we wanted to provide this one because our sole purpose really was just to show you minimal change. So based on how your wards look right now, this is meeting all of the goals of the statute with the minimal moves required. Next slide, please. Plan 2 here, this is actually number 1 for compaction and population deviation. So out of our 4, this one ranks number 1. And in it, it actually accomplishes the best population deviation as well for the upper right corner for wards 3, 5, and 9, and takes into account future growth, which I think is a really big thing that we should consider in looking at these as well. Next map, please. Map 3 ranks 3rd for compaction and population deviation. And it's very similar to map 2 before, but just a little bit of change in the southern portion at the bottom. If we can do next slide, please. And the last one from staff presentation, this one ranked 2nd place for compaction and population deviation. And it also utilizes 3, 5, and 9 in the right upper corner in a different manner, but it still gets beat out by Plan 2. So next slide. So as Billy mentioned, we had one resident that submitted a map proposal, which I would like to give accolades to him just for taking the time out to do it, because it's not an easy job, as we were saying. So he provided us an Excel document with his numbers, and then Troy Olson was able to put that in our GIS mapping tool that we received from Esri, and we actually were able to put his into a map format as well. Next slide, please. And this is his public plan that was submitted. What I would basically just say about it is that it does meet all of the qualifications, just the same as the statute would require. And that's all I have for you. We'll go into a deeper conversation, like Billy said, at the CAL meeting, and provide more statistics and other areas of conversation. Thank you.
Any comments? I'll make a comment. I'm impressed. This is really cool. Thank you. Okay, the next item is city manager's discussion. Do you have anything for us?
I do 4 slides. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. First slide, please. Saturdays on the Square. This is a free concert on July 16th, so that's coming up this Saturday. Next slide, please. Downtown Outdoor Farmers Market continues every Saturday, 7:30 to noon. I was here 2 weeks ago. Looked like the crowds were even larger, and I just heard in a meeting today with a downtown business, or I'm sorry, a business owner talking about how the numbers were even larger this past weekend. So just a great opportunity for the community. Next slide. Bloomington 101 returns. This is one that we're going to be messaging. The schedule can be found on the website as we finalize that. Application period is July to August 12th, and something that we're excited, getting this back after trying to get beyond COVID. So it's a great program. Truly encourage the residents to consider doing something like this. Last slide. This is one, my peer, city manager, Gita Newkirk up in Highland Park. We're all aware that July 4th, they had the shooting up there, horrific event. And I've had enough people reach out and ask, how can we support? So I reached out to Gita and asked her what would be some appropriate websites if anybody in our community would consider funding. So that can be found on this slide as well. And that's all I've got tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. The only thing I have to say is this past weekend with 4th of July, I had the honor of participating in the Holiday Spectacular Celebrate America. And if any of you have an opportunity to attend that, it was on Saturday and Sunday. They're a talented group of people. The performance and the program was inspirational to get you in the mood for the 4th of July. So check it out next year. Maybe Boca will be part of the part of the program instead of me, but I enjoyed it. So anybody else? Councilmember Rivett?
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure that I let West Side know that on Saturday, July 23rd, from 5 to 9 p.m., the WBRP will be hosting the annual West Fest celebration. This is an annual block party that brings together community, and we just celebrate the West Side. The event itself will be on Allen Street between Front and Washington, right by the WBRP building. And you'll see it says West Side Pride right on the side of that building. Beautiful mural. And it would be great to see everybody come out and celebrate the West Side and the best side and show our pride for our community. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Walsh?
Thank you. I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention who wasn't aware. We like to talk about our streets and the need for street improvements, things like that. This Wednesday at the Bloomington Junior High from 4:30 to 6:30, Illinois Department of Transportation is giving a presentation on the Route 9 improvements through town. Route 9 is one of those roads that we can't touch, but we all know that it needs a wee bit of help. And so I encourage everyone to go out, go to Bloomington Junior High from 4:30 to 6:30. It looks like it's an open house type of thing. I don't think there's a formal presentation. And so go see what IDOT is planning, give a little input if you can, that type of thing. This is an opportunity for us to see what is going to be going on. And as I think we can all imagine, once they start this work, there's going to be a little bit of traffic disruption. So, give yourself a little heads up. Thank you.
Councilmember Enid?
I was going to bring that up too. So that's good. Will there be opportunity for input at this meeting, or is it merely a presentation of what they're planning to do? Does anyone know? Input, great, good. will re-message some of what I've communicated. I'd also want to give a shout out to the West Side Miller Park, their beautiful mural that Art Illusion and local residents and organizations, Illinois Art Station, BCAI, a lot of groups came together and it's just stunning. So check it out. It's impressive.
Nick, do you have anything to say?
You know, I do have one comment since you asked on it. I found I found it really encouraging tonight. We had, and I changed my mind on one issue from the discussion, right? We had some really good initial public comment that was well thought out, that was respectful, that really gave good information, that prompted good questions. And I want to encourage people to keep doing that, because sometimes we just get a pure complaint and it's hard to really get the feel for what's coming from the community. But I want to thank the folks that really spoke well tonight, and I think their input did matter, and it did affect our votes. So thank you very much.
I agree. Anyone else? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I
I'll
will make
second.
that motion.
Councilmember Urban, and did I hear Councilmember Becker?
Sure.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed?